Hey y'all, Reverend Chris here. So, new month, new topic. And I know I'm a bit behind on my ministerial musings for this month, but that's okay. We're just going to speak truth to circumstance, which is what we're talking about this month. So, speaking truth to circumstance, what does that mean? Well, you might have, especially in these last few years, as we've been talking more and more about where is power and control in our society and things like that, you may have heard the phrase speaking truth to power. And it's this idea of speaking of the masses or of a group of people, speaking truth to those who have historically been in positions of power. And so this month in Centers for Spiritual Living, we're taking that idea and we're talking about circumstances, speaking truth to circumstances. Now, if you didn't, I highly recommend you go watch my talk from Sunday, because in it, I kind of dive deeper into this idea of circumstances and what does it mean to speak truth. But today I want to talk about Got Me Hypnotized, which is the theme for this week, the topic for this week. Now, it's all well and good to say that everything's all good, and yet sometimes it's just not. Sometimes the circumstances are really, really hard. Sometimes we're going through a divorce or a breakup, or our car has been totaled, or we have an injury or an illness, or we have a diagnosis of a disease that, the words chronic or incurable or there's nothing we can do is attached to it. And so what do we do in those circumstances? How can we actually use this teaching in a way that is supportive? Because the reality is that yes, we are co-creating our lives, and things happen. Life happens. We're still human. And at the end of the day, we're all not at the end of the day, but at the end of the road, we're all going to die, and we're all going to have an experience of what that looks like. And between our birth and our death, we're going to have all kinds of things happen to us, good, bad, ugly, and otherwise. And so if we can only use this teaching to either say that it's all good when it's not, or to beat ourselves up when it's not all good, then we're not necessarily using this teaching in a way that is powerful or helpful. And so when the circumstance has us hypnotized because it's so overwhelmingly big in whatever way, whether it's a diagnosis or a breakup or a lost job, or maybe we're losing our home, or a family member has passed away, maybe we're in the process of making our transition, whatever it may be, that circumstance can be really hypnotizing. And sometimes we can't think our way out of the circumstance. We just can't. We cannot think a happy thought and bring our spouse back to life, or just put out positive vibes, and all of a sudden that diagnosis goes away, or we no longer need hospice, or that relationship that has been deteriorating over the last decade isn't all of a sudden magically going to repair itself. So what do we do? What do we do in those circumstances, those situations where it looks really hard? Well, luckily, Ernest has some wisdom for us. Ernest Holmes, our founder, and this is one of my favorite things that he said. And I think it's because he doesn't bypass like we sometimes do in this teaching. What he says is, we are not so cold-blooded as to say to a person with pain that there is no such thing as pain. We would not be so cold-blooded to say there's no pain when there's pain. That is not our idea or purpose. And yet, how often in our teachings have we said, just pretend it's just, fake it till you make it. Just be happy. Well, if you focus on the pain, it will increase. What you focus on increases, right? And yet Ernest himself says we are not so cold-blooded as to say there is no pain when someone is in pain. Instead, he says, we admit the facts. Yes, you're in pain. I'm in pain. This sucks. We say that. It is quite a different thing to admit its necessity. And so, yes, we might be in pain. Things might be really hard. And yet the ability to speak truth to that circumstance, to say, yes, this is hard. I am hypnotized by this circumstance. I don't know where to go from here. And then to reach out to that higher truth and to say, and I am still a spiritual being having this human experience. And despite how hard it is still all God. And I am still a whole being. And I am strong enough to move through this or to find a different perspective. And then if it's something that we can't change or shift or think a different thought and have it all miraculously go away, then what we get to do is we get to shift our perspective about it. We get to look around and we get to say, what can I do? I can't change this diagnosis. Is there something I can do to make myself more comfortable, to make this easier? What is the decision that's in alignment for my highest and best good? If there's a treatment option, is it a treatment option that really works for me? Or do I have a different idea about what I want? What does being in control of my own life look like when I don't get to choose the outcome? What does being in control look like when things seem to be falling apart? How can I shift my own perspective? How can I allow myself to continue to know peace and know God and know my own wholeness and be authentic and vulnerable in this moment? That's what we're called to do. And honestly, it's a lot harder than just pretending everything's all right. It's really easy to just be happy all the time, or at least to pretend that. And yet, what I found is that the more that I am willing to admit or just be open to, yeah, you know what, this really stinks right now. The more that I can do that, the easier that gets and the harder it gets to pretend everything's okay when it's not. And in that way, we can begin to have spiritual communities that are actually supportive of everyone, no matter what they're going through in their lives. And if we have those spiritual communities, then when we go through something in our lives, we get to be supported too. And that's really what it's all about. I love you all.